The morning air was heavy with the scent of pine and wet earth, a sign that last night's storm had left the mountains restless and the rivers swollen. Mara's boots sank slightly into the mud as she climbed the steep trail, her breath coming in sharp, determined bursts. She had been tracking the mountain goats for hours, documenting their migration patterns for her wildlife research. And despite the chill and the ache in her legs, she couldn't stop. Nature was a living puzzle she had spent years trying to understand, and every step brought her closer to a breakthrough. Far below, in the valley where the river twisted like a silver ribbon, a figure appeared, unmistakably human, moving with a confidence born of familiarity with the wild. Elias, a rugged survivalist and ex-soldier, was known in these parts not for his friendliness, but for his uncanny ability to navigate the treacherous terrain that often claimed lives. He was on his own mission, gathering rare herbs and scouting the land for signs of illegal logging that threatened the fragile ecosystem. Fate, however, had a way of turning separate paths into collisions. Mara didn't notice the subtle snap of a branch behind her until it was almost too late. Her heart skipped when she saw him step into view, tall, steady, and alert, a rifle slung casually over his shoulder, though his eyes betrayed a calculation that was anything but casual. They sized each other up silently, instinct recognizing instinct, neither immediately trusting the other, yet sensing a common thread in their purpose. A sudden roar echoed from the cliffs. Above, a rock slide triggered by the lingering rains, and Mara froze, her pulse spiking as rocks tumbled dangerously close. Without hesitation, Elias grabbed her arm and yanked her to the side, shielding her with his body. The danger passed as quickly as it had come, leaving only the echoing crash and Mara's quickened breathing. Her first instinct was to snap at him for startling her, but the intensity in his gaze told her that in this world, mistakes could be fatal. "You can't trust these mountains to give you warnings," he said simply, his voice calm, yet carrying an edge that hinted at experience hard-earned. Mara, still catching her breath, realized she owed him more than words. Though she couldn't yet admit it aloud, they continued in uneasy silence, the path forcing them closer together. As the hours passed, Mara found herself noticing the precision in Elias's movements, the way he read the terrain, the subtle checks for hazards, the almost imperceptible signals he sent to himself and the land. She realized that for all his gruff exterior, he understood nature in a way that mirrored her own obsession, though his focus was survival and hers was study. When they stopped at a ridge to rest, Mara finally broke the silence, curiosity getting the better of caution. "You know these mountains like the back of your hand," she said, attempting to hide the admiration in her voice. Elias allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "You could say that. And you move like you belong in the wild, but your eyes are set on the creatures, not the land itself." The acknowledgement was honest, lacking any pretense, and it planted the first seeds of a fragile trust. As they descended toward the valley together, the clouds darkened once more, and the wind began to howl through the trees with an urgent insistence. Mara glanced at the sky, noting the storm gathering pace faster than expected. Elias didn't hesitate. He scanned the surroundings and led them toward a narrow canyon, knowing the riverbanks might offer shelter from both the elements and the terrain's hidden dangers. Yet as they moved, it became clear that nature had other plans. A sudden, blinding flash of lightning struck near the ridge they had just left, shaking the ground beneath them, followed almost instantly by a torrential downpour that turned the trails into slick, treacherous paths. Mara's notes, carefully packed in her waterproof backpack, threatened to be swept away, but Elias's steady hands guided her through the mud and rushing water. With every step, Mara realized that her research, her expertise, and even her determination would not suffice alone. She needed someone who could read the land, anticipate danger, and act decisively. And in that realization, she understood that Elias, reluctant, solitary, and enigmatic, was becoming more than a guide. He was an indispensable ally. Hours passed like minutes, the storm unrelenting as they struggled through the canyon. At one point, Mara slipped on a moss-covered rock and nearly fell into the raging river below. Instinctively, Elias caught her, the force of the current nearly knocking him off his feet as well. Clinging together, soaked and battered, Mara felt a strange sense of exhilaration mixed with fear. Here, in the heart of nature's wrath, the barriers between them began to dissolve. Words were unnecessary. Survival required synchronicity. By the time night fell, the storm had not relented, and the darkness settled over the valley like a heavy cloak. They stumbled upon a shallow cave, hidden behind a cascade of water, offering them refuge from the torrential rain. Inside, the faint glow of Elias's flashlight revealed the exhaustion etched on their faces. Mara, shivering but alive, finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She had always been independent, always relied on her knowledge and her wits. Yet tonight she admitted, at least silently, that she could not have endured the day without him. Elias, sitting nearby with a small fire struggling to take hold against the damp, didn't speak immediately. He merely nodded toward her, a gesture that said more than words ever could. And in that quiet understanding, a fragile partnership was formed, born not out of friendship or choice, but out of necessity and mutual respect. As they settled into the uneasy comfort of the cave, Mara unpacked her equipment to ensure her notes and cameras survived the storm. She glanced at Elias, wondering what drove him into these mountains day after day, and perhaps more importantly, why he seemed to care so little about fame or recognition, focusing only on survival and protection. The conversation began slowly, fragmented by the howling wind outside, but gradually layers peeled away. Mara shared her research, her fascination with the delicate balance of life in these mountains, while Elias spoke cautiously about the people who exploited the land, the dangers he had faced, and the reasons he remained a solitary guardian of the wilderness. With each story, Mara saw a different side of him, disciplined, deeply intuitive, and driven by a purpose that, in some ways, mirrored her own. By the time they drifted into a restless sleep, the storm outside still raging, both understood an unspoken truth alone. Neither could face the challenges the wilderness or fate would throw at them, but together they had a chance. Morning broke with a silver light filtering through the cave entrance, and the aftermath of the storm revealed a transformed landscape. Trees had fallen, trails were washed away, and the river swelled with debris, a reminder that nature was unpredictable and unforgiving. Yet for Mara and Elias, the day also brought clarity. They were no longer strangers, navigating the same mountains by coincidence. They were partners, bound by circumstance and a shared determination to survive and protect. Mara adjusted her backpack, feeling the weight of both her equipment and newfound responsibility. Elias scanned the horizon, alert as always, and for the first time, he allowed a trace of optimism to linger in his gaze. Together they stepped out of the cave, ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing that their journey had only just begun. Danger, discovery, and unexpected bonds awaited them. And one thing was certain: fighting nature and fate required not just skill, but trust, and they had begun to forge that fragile, powerful trust. And as they moved forward into the wild, Mara's camera clicked instinctively, capturing the storm-ravaged beauty around them. She thought of the viewers who would one day see her work, of the stories that would inspire people to respect and protect the wilderness, and she realized that this journey was bigger than either of them. Elias caught her gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, and for a fleeting moment, the mountains seemed less hostile, less untamed, as if even nature recognized that this unlikely partnership was meant to endure. And so, with hearts pounding, minds alert, and spirits intertwined by necessity and courage, Mara and Elias stepped deeper into the unknown, ready to fight whatever storms, natural or fateful, lay ahead.